in real life, you can have the best of times and the worst of times, but under the Trump-obsessed media, it's all bad all the time. And you know things are pretty good when the Trump's pissed off storyline gets trotted out.
President Trump isolated, growing more furious by the day. His mood dark and angry.
Jesus Christ. At the Mueller probe, the president is said to be in a foul mood.
The president's state of mind is the worst it's been since the campaign, and that among the West Wing staff there is a near universal sense of foreboding.
A universal sense of foreboding. That's how I feel after eating Taco Bell.
And that's using millions of innocent people as sort of pawns, and it was wrong. And then a few minutes later, sort of slammed the table, and when Leader Pelosi said she didn't agree with the wall, he just walked out and said we have nothing to discuss. These meetings, and I'm thankful the president's calling us back again, because this president wants to find common ground. Watch what he has said. He's moved from a concrete barrier to make sure that they had slabs. He's talked about other elements that the Democrats talked about. In those meetings, every Democrat will say they're for border security. So then I asked the question, well, what's your definition of border security?
No shit.
Who in America today believes you could have border security with not some form of a barrier? We've watched what happened in San Diego. El Paso has become one of the safest cities because they have a barrier. We watched in Yuma, Arizona. What's happened is those illegal crossings have dropped more than 90%. We know it works. We know we need it. We know
you know why they don't want it? Because they got their finger in the pie.
Stood strong. He is standing strong for the American public, but more importantly, he's the one person in the room that's trying to find compromise where the Democrats will not move at all.
He gave an outstanding speech. It was concise. It was compassionate and truly compassionate. He provided the context, both in terms of what's going on in the border, the expense, which is de minimis, and who's really responsible. Now, let's keep a few things in mind when you watch Schumer and Pelosi. They're pathological liars. They've been in Congress over half a century. What the hell have they done about the border? Nothing. They're part of the scam artists. They get amnesty, legalization, citizenship, and never secure the border. Just spend billions and trillions more. More debt, more deficits on the redistribution of wealth, on $200 billion a year on illegal aliens. One more time. They fooled Reagan. They fooled Bush 41. They fooled Bush 43. But they're not going to fool Donald Trump, who's dealt with tougher than Pelosi and Schumer. So let me point out a few things. These two and the rest of them are never forced to explain their flip-flop. When they were for border security, they voted to authorize walls, they voted to fund some of the walls, and now all of a sudden it's immoral. You know what's immoral? When everybody talks about those government employees who will be temporarily inconvenienced, who will get their money back, but nobody talks about the unskilled, low-skilled American worker who has to compete with people from Guatemala, from Honduras, from Mexico, from south of the border who come into this country illegally.
Job, because to maintain our security, we get arrested with the rest of the actual bad guys.
Have you ever seen a child realize that you were their rescuer?
One time, it was October of 2014. It was the largest child rescue that I've ever heard of. We rescued over 120 victims.
In this video, a different mission. The alleged traffickers brought children to an island, thinking they were going to partner up with the undercover agents to build a child sex hotel. But their plot was foiled. The bad guys were arrested, and somehow the kids learned that the Americans were actually their saviors.
Would like to commend you and the Rules Committee members for allowing all of us to come before you to share with you our concerns and help shine a light on where we think we should be paying more attention. And so the testimony that I have today will combine a number of the areas.
Maxine Waters.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank
yes,
you.
Ma'am. If you could please do us a favor and tell us that section and the amendment number, it would enable us to follow you perhaps a little bit more closely, and that would be of help to the committee.
All right, let me try and do that now. I think that you did mention transportation. Is that right?
Yes, that we're doing today. Transportation, agriculture, state, foreign office.
I'm sorry, would you say that again?
Appreciate the opportunity to speak directly to the American people tonight about how we can end this shutdown and meet the needs of the American people. Sadly, much of what we heard from President Trump throughout this senseless shutdown has been full of misinformation and even malice. The president has chosen fear. We want to start with the facts. The fact is, on the very first day of this Congress, House Democrats passed Senate Republican legislation to reopen government and fund smart, effective border security solutions. But the president is rejecting these bipartisan bills which would reopen government over his obsession with forcing American taxpayers to waste billions of dollars on an expensive and ineffective wall, a wall he always promised Mexico would pay for. The fact is, President Trump has chosen to hold hostage critical services for the health, safety, and well-being of the American people.
That has been created, and it will be headed up to our borders. Trump at that time, he's going to use national security as the push to build the wall. Now, what's very interesting, we know that very, very soon there's going to be a declass of FISA. There's going to be a release of information. The sealed indictments, well, they will be unsealed, and there will be videos, documentation, and whatnot. Q has been telling us that the deep state, they have been preparing to counter everything that is coming out. And we mentioned this before, but I noticed more and more articles like this are coming out. And this article says, the rise of fake porn as blackmail, technology used to weaponize doctored sex videos. Now, this is about making someone look like they're saying something when they really haven't. Remember, we put up those 2 videos, and someone can be talking, and the person can be, the person looks like they're saying it, but the person is not. And this is technology that they're using. So what they're saying is, when you see these sex tapes, when you see these things, it might not be those people. Now, what's very interesting, we know that there's going to be certain videos that are put out there, and there might be human trafficking, sex tapes, and whatnot. And what they're trying to say is, well, this is really not Hillary Clinton. This is really not Obama. This is really not. And they're trying to make the case here by showing that this is what might have been done. The difference, though, is that through video analysis, you can tell if it is doctored. Q, Trump, the Patriots, they're going to have the raw footage.
On the coach roads I did ride, sword and pistol by my side. Many a young maid lost her mamas to my grave. Many a soldier shed his lifeblood on my blade.
Judicial Watch tonight suing the CIA for communications between former CIA Director John Brennan and former top Senate Democrat Harry Reid. Did Brennan feed Reid information about alleged Russian collusion with the Trump campaign so Reid would then publicly push that narrative during the 2016 campaign? That's what they're trying to find out. Chris Farrell is Director of Investigations and Research at Judicial Watch and joins us live. Chris, great to have you with us.
Hey, Sean.
Okay, so you've officially filed this lawsuit. Let's walk people through a little bit of what happened. In August, Brennan briefed a lot of folks, including then the top Democrat in the Senate, Harry Reid. 2 days later, Reid writes a letter. It includes this to Comey, then FBI director. The evidence of a direct connection between the Russian government and Donald Trump's presidential campaign continues to mount. The American people deserve to have a full understanding of the facts from a completed investigation before they vote this November. He had to know the letter would go public. So now that narrative about collusion is now within the election conversation.
Sure, this is just one of the channels by which the Stop Trump gang, and there was obviously a handful of operators here, used various systems, whether it was the executive branch agencies, the Congress, to feed this narrative in and just have it create the perception that, well, everyone says, and well, everyone knows, and there's an echo chamber effect, and once everyone starts saying the same thing, it takes on a life of its own. And it's an information operation. It's how the public is manipulated, it's how the media is manipulated, and all you need is, the tiniest little kernel of half-truth, and they embroider and embroider and embroider, and they start repeating one another, and this echo chamber has a very negative effect.
View that the only explanation for the president's behavior here is that the Russians have something on him?
His behavior is so inexplicable and so against the interests of the United States, so against what all of his advisors would tell him, that Americans are scratching their head and saying, if that's not the explanation, that Putin has something on it, what is it? What the heck would it be?
Open them up with, had all these looks in their face. What went on? Well, what were they opening up? What went on with the cards? What do your sources say went on with these cards at the George H.W. Bush 41 funeral?
So, the day before the funeral, December 4th, two of my sources called me up and said, are you going to be watching the funeral tomorrow? I said, heck no. Are you kidding? I mean, this has been ridiculous, all this fawning over this globalist, George H.W. Bush. I can't even, no, I'm not watching that. They go, you need to watch it. And watch close and see what happens. And I go, what am I watching for? We're not telling you. Just watch. I go, ugh. So I end up watching the thing. And I'm watching the thing live, and I'm watching, and there were several observations I made in watching this thing that at the time I didn't realize were all going to kind of add up. But a couple things. When they first all started getting there, everybody's kind of having a party, right? The Clintons are talking to the Bidens, and they're saying some things to the Obamas. And what's interesting is when Pence came in, he greeted Hillary like an old friend.
Yes, he did.
And I get a lot of grief for this, but from the very beginning, I've had huge problems and reservations about Pence.
Me too.
And the reason is because every time I see him, I get the same feeling I would get around some really bad actors in Washington.
Yep. Me too.
That I knew were bad actors, that were played on the globalist side. And he walks in and, he's carrying on with Hillary, and they're laughing.
Yeah, like they're best fucking buddies, man.
I'm watching this and I'm going, well, this adds up. I mean, again, here we go, And I'm watching this thing, and then all of a sudden, Trump's going to show up. And
he doesn't even look him in the eye.
Trump comes in, and Melania, a couple things. I mean, Hillary, right before this, Hillary is looking through the program, right? And I see, and something falls out. Well, I didn't think that much of it at the time. Until Jimmy Carter looks over at Hillary, and he starts looking at his thing like, oh, God,
I didn't get one.
This is sad. I didn't get one of these. And he looks at Rosalind, and he's having her go through, and she's not getting, and poor Jimmy seems really bummed out he didn't get this, right? So I start thinking, well, this is kind of weird. Hillary got something, and then when she looked at it, Hillary, I mean, she didn't get crazy, but she, had an expression on her face that was a concerned look, right? And then later, I saw the Bidens, same thing, and they were kind of acting up, and the Pence's got one, and the Obamas got one. I mean, this was later. I saw that, but I initially seen Hillary's, and then Jimmy Carter's reaction. So, well, he didn't get one, she got one. Let's just tuck that away. And then President Trump comes in, and her reaction was, whoa, I'm not looking at this guy. She was, it wasn't pretty, right? And what was interesting was when President Trump walked in, and Melania, seated behind them were the Pences. Neither President Trump nor the First Lady said hello to them or shook their hands.
Yep.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Oh, no, and at the time I said, well, maybe this is what the guys were talking about that I should watch for, because they know how much I really dislike Pence. And this is an indication that, yeah, you know, there's something brewing between the two of them, and that, this, you know, maybe we're going to see Pence, you know, moving out or something, you know, down the line. So this is what they wanted me to watch. Didn't say a word to them, either of them. They sat down and they said some things with the Obamas, but everybody was very, very cold, right? Then George W. comes in with the family, and he wasn't looking good. He was kind of wobbly, right? He was, and seemed really, and I'm thinking, well, you know, maybe it's because, you know, of his dad dying. On the other hand, his dad had his dad had been having medical problems for many years. So, and his dad was, I don't know, 90-something. So, I mean, it's not like his dad was 50 and died, right? I mean, this was not a shock. And so he just looked a little bit off, kind of nervous and that kind of thing. And then occasionally they'd be shooting, the coverage would be looking at him and the family, and he was just looking very ill at ease. And at one point they showed him, and he was kind of writing something on a piece of paper. Well, the word I heard was that what were in the envelopes that Pence's, Obama's, Biden's, Clinton's received, and as I was told, there were a number of other people in the audience who also got envelopes. In the envelopes were not, if you will, indictments, but actually an indication of coming attractions of who was going to be on the hook. Okay?
Wow.
But that's different. So then we go through the service, and George W. gives his eulogy to his dad, and then he walks and he sits down, and I'm watching this, and he's kind of almost rocking in his chair a little bit, okay, and licking his lips and rubbing his hands, and this is a guy who is obviously very nervous about something. And it's toward the end of the ceremony. So you'd think if he's going to be doing that, he'd be doing that right before he went up to speak, although he's given thousands of speeches. But now he's acting like this, and his speech is over. And now they have the casket, and they're passing by. And as they pass by, this is where Laura looks at something, not an envelope, and shows Jeb, and Jeb, who should never play poker,
that's a fact.
Looks like he's about to vomit. And the question is, what was that? And one of the things I saw afterwards, they had a wider angle where Trump is watching all this. President Trump is, and he's watching all this. So it was my indication that the boss knew what was happening here. Okay. And what I believe is that at that time where they showed George Bush writing something, George Bush wrote something, and then as the casket was passing by, which I believe was what he was tasked to do, he showed it to Laura, and Laura showed it to Jeb. And Laura said to W, I think something like, "Is this real?" And his answer was, "Yup," and he put his head down, kind of like.
So they were put on notice that you guys are in trouble.
What that note was, what I was told, is not what the other people had. What George W. had written, it's my understanding, was something about Pence. You see, Pence was the Bush's insurance policy. Pence, I believe, from what I've told, is a globalist. And the plan ultimately was to move Trump out. You take that any way you want, okay? Impeachment or other means. Move Trump out, Pence steps in. I believe if you go back to last year's Super Bowl, who was in George H.W.'s private box? But Pence.
Yep.